We don't even name for this podcast.
That is a good point. There's so many podcasts these days. It's actually
Okay, that's the name then. That's the name then.
It's just
Not another fucking podcast.
it's not another podcast.
Not another fucking podcast.
Okay, that's what we're going down.
All right, guys, welcome to another fucking, well, not another fucking podcast. So this is essentially going to be, something that's relatively sporadic. Me and Dan are going to come on here and chat about bodybuilding topics in general. So we'll delve a little bit into the science of stuff. We'll delve into the political side of bodybuilding. We'll delve into the psychological side of things, and we'll look at things that like, such as like coaching practices and, comparing things from obviously Dan as an upcoming coach and me as a guy who's been in the sport for a long period of time. But it's just going to, we found that it's going to be really good to have, my experience and then his view and obviously his upcoming sort of view and how things are coming along, and combine the two, and hopefully you guys get a really good sort of bit of information essentially from all of this. So
yeah, it's cool having like two educational focused coaches, but from the fresher kind of like more modern, just taking off kind of what the studies are saying, what modern bodybuilding is about versus all the experience and stuff.
I suppose what's going to be interesting, Dan, as well, is like how I've seen things change over the years. Do you know what I mean? I'm going with that. So like how I've seen essentially the world of bodybuilding change 100 times over, and the fads and the fucking Vibram shoes that everyone wore at one point, and
Sure, that is something I want to touch on. What do you feel like have been the biggest fads in bodybuilding over the last 10 or so years that have completely fallen off now, but were lived and breathed by back then?
I don't know, man. I think there's always a few. I think they do sort of work their way in, don't they, a little bit, and then they kind of leave. But I think that bodybuilding fans do this, and you tell me what you think about this. But I think that they come along, they're a big hoorah, they cause a lot of divide between community. They a lot of old school guys who aren't actually buying out now, which is kind of nice, if I'm honest. Like they go, well, we just bench press back in the day, and no, we don't use cuffs, and we don't use bands, and we don't do all of this. And then what they do is they're in for a while. They get broken down into just part of bodybuilding. I'm not really even a fan anymore. And then we kind of move forward, and okay, eventually the next thing comes along. So there was a massive fucking thing, wasn't there, about cuffs being like, oh, why don't you just grip the bar? And it's like, you're not trying to build a wrist, you're trying to build a muscle. So big, you know what I mean? Like
I definitely have seen this with like very generalized, bold statements in training where you must do this consistently.
Well, we used to do this, and this worked fine. And it's like, no, you don't get me wrong, basics do work, of course they do. But there is ways to make basics.
Like we had periods where people were saying, you must not deadlift. Like, you shouldn't deadlift. It's not good risk to reward or whatever. And then we've had periods where people have said, you have to deadlift. Why can't we have
deadlift,
like accurate statements of like, if deadlift suits you, do deadlifts. If it doesn't, maybe pick another hinge movement that can get a similar out.
Or even if you struggle with hinge movements due to back issues or sciatica or whatever, maybe you're just not going to be able to do them, and maybe you'll have to find another way to
still build a great physique, irrespective.
It's one of those. I think that's something that you kind of have to look at. Like, it's either it's a case of, isn't it? It's a case of, look, like, what works well for you, what does the job that you need it to do for you specifically, and obviously different. But people are always going to be opinionated. People are always going to go, but I built this physique without it. It's rubbish. And it's like, no, you just didn't need it, or you just didn't have access to it at that time. Right?
I think it's been great comparing people talking about like how bodybuilding hasn't improved over the last like 50 years. I mean, I've heard back say that a lot, that bodybuilding has not improved at all. But I think when we saw in that hostile show recently, where they did the black backdrop and proper lighting like it used to be, and how it changed the way people looked so much.
Everyone was in shape, and you're like,
it's like all of a sudden, whoa, everybody's like freakishly built. It's like,
and here's the thing, Dan, as well. Here's what's interesting. It's funny that you mentioned that about like, obviously, essentially bodybuilding hasn't really sort of improved or anything. How many first timers do you see these days turn up to shows in PCA first timer shows that are just fucking
Freaks.
awesome? They are freaks. They are freaks. They are peeled. They are absolutely enormous. They are whatever. Now, I am not joking you. If you go back 10 years, there was a handful of guys who were pretty good, who did like NABA, Midlands, NABA Southwest, NABA whatever in the first timer sort of classes.
Yeah.
And those classes were big. There was like 15 guys in those classes, right?
Yeah.
But half of them, or at least 2/3 of them, were rubbish.
Yeah.
They weren't heels. They weren't.
Even if you go back like 5 years ago, the expectation at first timers show was that most people were coming in soft.
Yeah.
Nowadays, there is like
please go home,
and it's like it's not even like just shredded; it's legit peeled from the bone. Like everybody is peaked perfect. There's so much more knowledge out there and education. Like there's people are not missing anywhere near as much as they used to. Like you know,
that's the thing, isn't it, as well? Like because we don't have sort of when it works for him, maybe I'll try his protocols.
Yeah,
you break it down specifically for the criteria, like what is going to work for you.
It's become a lot more data driven and scientific, which means the results are a lot more predictable.
Exactly.
And the pressures on coaches are definitely a lot more. That was definitely one thing I wanted to talk about was kind of do you feel like the pressures on coaches to get it right is too high necessarily now?
I think so. I think to a degree. I think you do have to consider. I think it's fair. You have to consistently deliver results.
Yeah, for sure.
And if it's not every single time, it needs to be bloody well most of the time.
Yeah, I think most of the time is a fair thing. I think more often than not, obviously, you should be hitting the mark. I think, however, it's become because people obviously everything's promoted through social media and people do not show their mess ups. They just don't. And a lot of people aren't honest and open about them. They put somebody on stage, it's not gone quite right. They might have done everything they thought was right and it just didn't go to plan. And that happens in coaching, that's normal. But because people don't promote it, the expectation now is like, you're an awful coach if you mess up once. If a coach comes on like,
you sound so fucked up, so and so's piece, and it's like, hang on a minute, okay, we don't know anything about what's happened with that. We've seen an outside view of a single moment within it. Like, you can't say that. Like a lot of the time, you are going to have, I would say, more often than not, probably like 75% of the time, if something goes wrong, it's usually the client has taken something upon themselves to do something.
Yeah.
Well, not with every client, but obviously there are some coaches that are generally just like crap and really shouldn't be doing it.
Yeah, I mean, like the burger and guys, like just chuck it and see what happens.
Well, if you've never done it,
I think,
you never had a burger on your day, but you never tried Bioside, you start with a full fucking tablet, it's like, all right, cool.
I don't know why anybody thinks that like that is the go-to approach without any trial and error.
Yeah, only if you actually know like it's going to work because we've done similar sort of
thing. If you've practiced it and trialed it, you've got a predictable look out of it, then it's not guesswork. But if you're just doing it because it's peak week, and I see this with a lot of different.
How many weeks is it since you've eaten red meat? And it's like, 16. I'm like, so you're going to go eat some greasy red meat? All right, mate, this is about to get fucking bad, isn't it?
Just honestly, people seem to take it upon themselves, coaches and athletes, where it's like all of a sudden it's peak week, everything needs to change. And it's like, has your client looked very good up to date? If they've looked very good up to date, then why do you feel like everything needs to now change?
Yeah, the only thing that's the thing. Do you know what's really funny as well is that when a client asks me like, hey, what are we doing for what food sources are we going to use from the carb up? And I'm like, the same fucking ones.
Yeah, the same. Everything we've used up to date that we know digests.
Why would we do anything different? What's the point?
And I don't understand is like if you're using carb up, like you've put in all this work, like you've done 99% of the work. Why is it now that you feel like you need to have a binge on the carb up, which is like the most important bit, like the last bit of getting onto the stage, where people feel like,
you're not flat, like you're hungry, that's it. I'm not full. No, your stomach's not full, your muscles are very.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard to comprehend to people that hunger signaling is completely thrown off at that point. No matter how much you eat, you will not be satisfied.
Yeah, it doesn't like do like another carb with this fucking stuff.
I can say that because I was the guy that gained 50 pounds post show on my first within 1 week in Dubai. So, and I can say I was eating like 10 plates of food a day, and that was not even.
So it's an interesting one for you, Dan. So do you think that going on a holiday immediately after prep is done is a really bad idea?
Awful idea. Awful idea. I was in this situation where it was a pre-booked holiday, and I would never ever do it again.
If our clients, if they say I'm gonna go away at the end of after my show, if they say to me, I go, can you go away 5 or 6 weeks after?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, but I want to go away when I'm in shape, and I'm like, yeah, but you're about to ruin an entire off season by going.
Yeah.
Like
that's how I was.
12 weeks per show is about to go down the fucking shitter because you will not stick to plan.
The reality is, as much as everybody says, oh well, it's all just water weight, it isn't. It's like you accumulate a lot more body fat when you're that lean, and your body knows that it needs to store energy because you're about to starve yourself again. And if you've been in that situation, you've eaten like 20,000 calories a day, do you not think you're going to be storing some fat? Like when I gained that 50 pounds, maybe 15, 20 pounds of it was water, but there was like 30 pounds of fat there. Like I had to diet it all back off.
Joe Jeffries had a client like that before. He put like 50 pounds on in like a week I show. And the bullshit he tried to spew this client this week for me has all been about rebuilding relationships, and it's like, no, mate, it's about fucking shoving cake in your mouth, you fat fuck.
Yeah, I mean, I at least owned it and said, you know what,
I just
wanted to enjoy this.
I've 3 times back to back. My first ever show, my second ever show, and my third show. I fucked it post show. I absolutely fucking smashed it like a muppet. I really did a number on myself. So for anyone to when you've done things like that, it's better to just come clean with it, because chances are you just look like a fucking donkey if you don't.
Yeah, and it completely changes the approach you help the client with if you know where the mindset's actually at. It's like a binge. And it's something where you might need to be less aggressive with the dieting of it off, because hunger signaling might then spiral out of control again and then start a really peak pattern of binging. Then that would be different to somebody that, like in my situation in Dubai, I ate because I wanted to eat and I was on holiday. I was able to immediately come and diet it straight back off afterwards. The simple fact that it wasn't like a poor relationship with food thing. I was just like, I'm going to be grumpy if I'm hungry and I just want to eat. And so when it came back, I wanted to diet and it was all cool. But in a different situation with somebody that's having some issues with body dysmorphia and binge restrict, which post show is common, I think that needs a lot more careful dieting approach.
Absolutely. Going on holiday straight after the show is just how you ruin your entire bodybuilding experience from there on out. And and if you want to do it, but please don't come back and go, oh, why didn't you tell me? Because that's not. And don't go when you come back. Don't expect me to be like, hey, you look great. Like, I'm gonna say,
you've got to be honest. There's a time to sugarcoat it, and that is not the time.
No, I know that's the thing as well. And as a coach, you have to, I'm lucky enough that I'm in a position now where I don't have to. It sounds really weird. I don't have to necessarily all the time consider what I'm saying to the client and the tone of what I say, because if a client generally has a problem with what I'm saying, and they're having have a problem with the tone of what I'm saying, then they're not really understanding what I'm actually trying to say.
Yeah.
And they can go. And if they go, to me, a lot of the time, it doesn't actually matter if a client leaves or such, because I'm in a lucky position where I've got 90 clients. So I'm in that position now. That's not me being like, hey, like you can all go and fuck off and I'd have no problem with it. Of course there's no problem. But I'm in a position where if you generally cannot stick to what I'm trying to help you to do and the goal that you want to achieve, that I'm helping you with, If you can't get there, that's all right. Like, you can be welcome. You're welcome.
The truth of the matter is, once you've put enough years in the industry and performed at a high enough level, you have a lot of demand for people wanting your help because you produce consistent results. And at that point, you don't necessarily need to pander to people.
No, Aaron, that's it, isn't it? It's not pandering. I've never really had that approach with anyone, and I think that's probably served me quite well, because it kind of bottlenecks a bit of like what you're trying to get out of, you know, like and what comes through the middle, sort of the pipe of that is just the best.
To be honest, I had quite a similar mindset, because when I first started coaching, I was working full time, so I did not need the money from coaching. And because of that, it was like, if you're not going to follow the plan, just don't be here, because like I don't want to waste my time.
And I'm not telling you this for the fun of it, and I'm not telling it to be a dick. And I'm definitely not wrong. I've done this for 15 years. I'm saying I'm not wrong, but
that was kind of my mindset, and it was like, I want to help everybody, but if people want to help themselves, then I don't think there is.
If you're worth helping, I'll help you.
Yeah, that's the way I see it. Is
what questions you've got here? Got some interesting ones. We've got so current state of the industry. We've covered a lot of it. You got direct exposure.
I do. I'm intrigued to see your thoughts, because there is obviously an increase in natural diuretic supplements that have come out ever since we had quite an uptake in deaths from pharmaceutical diuretic use.
I think that one.
Like Lasix and.
I don't know if the two went tightly hand in hand, but maybe. So what's your experience with drug diuretics? Like,
so my thought process for there has been a time and a place for using pharmaceutical diuretics, but for the most part, I consider that natural bodybuilding to some degree set the standard of conditioning. And some of that is due to obviously fluid retention from using PEDs and stuff. But my thoughts is, if you can get bone dry and peeled naturally, then I don't think necessarily pharmaceutical implementation is necessary. There might be a time and a place for it, but for the most part, water manipulation, sodium manipulation has been most successful for me, and maybe using products like Peak Max or H2O Remove where needed. I think there can be situations where it's like unprecedented, where things slip-ups happen, and you might be trying to counteract errors, or like increasing stressful situation or something where people are retaining water that's been unplanned for, when maybe pharmaceutical diuretics might be beneficial. But I think
usually like from a stress-based level of water retention, that like a sodium excreting thiazide plus diuretic isn't going to be a lot of good. What you're doing is managing that stressful situation to the best.
Yes, for sure.
But if that's not a problem, if that's not possible, then whatever. In terms of where I'm at with things, I was probably where you're at maybe 3 years ago. And now I'm very much in the case of like, it varies depending on the look that you're trying to bring to the level of the show that you're trying to bring. So yes, natural bodybuilding does allow you to get down to that level of detail within a because there is no exogenous like T3, T4, glutathione, test, trend, mass, this, that, Relex, glyphosate, and insulin. There isn't multiple compounds being thrown in. However, if you look at a natural bodybuilder's blood work at the back of the prep, they have no hormones.
Yeah, there's literally.
So because there is no hormones, right?
That is a worthwhile thing to put out there. Is like when people are using AIs and stuff at the back end of prep to reduce estrogen. As a natural bodybuilder, your estrogen and testosterone is already flawed. So
maybe what someone does then is 2 weeks. 2 weeks out from a show, maybe someone tries this in the future, maybe 2 weeks out from the show, you pull everything other than the things that you need to basically keep things going. So, or you remove everything and go down to the total and utter bare minimum rather than peaking your androgens at that point. If someone wants to bring maybe that's something someone tried. Maybe if someone hasn't used any T3, T4 or whatever on the prep, so that you don't obviously have to continue with that all the way through for the remaining 2 weeks. Maybe someone does, just takes out the clenbuterol that they've been using, takes out all of the injectables, and just uses maybe 50 milligrams of RNA for 2 weeks. and no other bits and bobs, no growth hormone, no AIs, nothing, and just uses that and just see what happens with that. Because androgens in there, but obviously testosterone in general, and estrogen, there's not really going to be anything anywhere apart from a little metabolic floating around your system. So, you know, maybe that's okay, but I think that look in itself from a protocol like that is going to be very flat, very depleted, very
probably shredded and detailed look. Very flat and depleted. And it won't look, doesn't bring the fullness that is required in.
That's where I'll go. So obviously, okay, let's go back to obviously diuretics or talk here. In terms of general diuretics, that's why I implement them in peaks with people now, because I want to be able to continue my carbohydrate loading until the last possible point, so that carryover to the day of the show sits nicely and the fullness is there. So when I used to do, say the show was on a Saturday, I used to load people on Wednesday, Thursday, and then I would have a Friday where I would go to pro fat, peak max, sodium and fluid ratio, loading water, removal of sodium, and bringing it. And then on the day of the show, they would just eat minimally to sort of tighten myself over. Yes, that does bring a very, very dry look, but every single time I've done it with someone, they're flat. Every single time. Or, no, not flat, but not as full as they could.
I think not as full as they could be is probably the better way to put it. Because I think providing you reintroduce fluids, sodium at the sort of right timings, you can bring a full look, but probably not as full a look as you can with
diuretic and right up until the mark. So
and filling over super physiologically loading almost.
So think about this from this sort of point of view as well, man. So like super physiological loading in terms of insulin usage during super physiological loading in terms of anastrol or superdrol or something combined with the load. You're looking at an increase in sodium, an increase in fluid during the load, obviously just for sort of absorption of that glucose collection, whatever, in general, and overall fullness and everything. Then if they have generally responded really well to a little bit of junk food, some fats and whatever, you know, they have routinely done it. If that is the last meal going in before bed, and that's what you opted for, nothing obscene, but just enough that there's enough fats in there that the stomach gets on with fine, doesn't cause any digestive distress, and slows down the sort of churning rate, so to speak, of the carbohydrates that we've put in over the last 2 days. Now what you've done is you've loaded them to a point where they're as full as they can possibly be. Now, what you would utilize at that point, obviously, is a diuretic following that. If you're using a diuretic following that, that in itself is going to be you know, the way that you then get rid of that excessive sodium. So sodium is then excreted, water then follows due to the sodium excretion. So now you've essentially excreted a bunch of sodium that was excess, water's been pulled from it, including excess subcutaneous water. You're now left with a physique that was just as fucking full as it was the day before, and now it's dry as a boat. So that's why I would use them personally. Now, at an IFBB pro level or pro qualifier level, that level of
I think that is necessary.
That is what wins the show, is the level of development, the level of symmetry, size, proportions, whatever, but also having that very full, very bursting, and a physique that gets better on stage, essentially.
I think at the top level, you can't afford to be sacrificing any size against these people, any fullness on stage, because these guys are such a high competitive level, and the standards, like, it's different when you're doing amateur shows, whether it's natural shows. If you're the best person in shape and you're reasonably full, you're gonna win. Like,
you're healed and you've done that protocol that you would obviously spoke on before, back in, you know, manipulations, natural diuretics, whatever. You'll be very dry, of course you will. You will have sacrificed some fullness, but you will be skinned to the bone. And then you go to stage at a small BCA show, and you're a novice guy in a class of 6 other guys. 3 of them aren't even in fucking shape, and the other 2 that you're against really in the first corner are relatively good, right? Right? You'll beat them because you obviously, you know, you bring in that look. However, for you then to progress up that point to start doing IFBB, super heavyweights, light heavies, where these guys just do not fuck around. You are then looking at chemical warfare in that sort of sense, really.
And I would still preface that for the majority of people that really do not understand how to use pharmaceutical diuretic, you are better off using a lot more predictable approach. And if you want to get some consistent client results, maybe do your research beforehand and probably work your way into that space.
Well, I would always test them on yourself on the round preps, or
I'm that guy, yeah.
or a very, very close friend before you then decide that, okay, this is the type to sort of do it and use it.
Yeah, I mean, that's where you get a bad reputation and where you have a miss. And it's like when you start trying to test things on people that you're not sure of the outcome close to an important show.
Yeah,
I think you need to keep things predictable, and diuretics can be predictable if you have the experience to know what the outcome looks like.
It, yeah, and obviously understanding dosage as well. It's very, very all well and good to say take half of one, but if you've just taken half of the tablet that was already 25 milligram dosing, it's going to 12.5 milligrams. It's not,
yeah,
and diazides, it's not going to be enough of HCTZ to do anything. It's not
on top of, I think dehydration protocols in general are just completely misled. Often, at times, people are starting dehydration whilst they're trying to load at the same time.
That makes you laugh. That really makes you laugh, doesn't it?
Like even long-term like pharmaceutical diuretic usage all throughout peak week, I just don't understand.
Yeah, 5 days out, that's not aldactone.
Aldactone, yeah, that's typically, and I see this even with top-level coaches using aldactone all throughout peak week. I don't understand how they're expecting to achieve that super physiological fullness when they're
if you say you're like 2 days out or 3 days out and you start with like say 12.5 milligrams of aldactone, that's not really going to kick you.
Yeah, that's not enough fluid that you're going to not be able to load.
When you start doing so much, then it's just like, oh, right.
But when people are hammering high dosages of
aldactone multiple times in a day,
weeks out, like, I mean, I've seen this a lot in America. With clients, like starting diuretics like 4 weeks out.
Yeah.
Like,
isn't it? It's funny, man. When the people say that, you just go, okay, well, they're going to look shit, aren't they?
Do you think that UK bodybuilding, in terms of the science of it, is at a higher level to America?
Yeah. Of course it's better. Of course it's fucking are. Anyone who says that is living in fucking la la land.
Well, I think the reason more casual people in the industry obviously will know this, but more casual viewers will say that there is a lot more high-level bodybuilders coming out of America, obviously not taking into consideration the higher population in America, but they will then assume that there must be much better coaches, on top of the fact that you've got people like Chris Aceto and Hani Rambond at the top of the game that are obviously out there in America.
But you know, people like Aceto has managed to get to where he is based on the clientele that he has had.
Well, yeah.
It's not. You can tell Jay Cutler did most of his shit himself anyway.
Yeah, I think one thing people kind of neglect is that at the top level of coaching, everybody knows what they're doing. Like everybody knows what they're doing, and at that point,
it's not bodybuilding.
Yeah. But like even in the top level of coaching, like the top level of coaches, everybody knows how to get you peeled. Like,
not hard.
Yeah, there's some slight differences in the way people go about things and into an achievable quantity.
It doesn't matter with a freak bodybuilder.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter. I have prepped a share of them, and I know that if I gave, that protocol or a very similar one to you, you would not get the exact same results as these fucking people. Like. Let me think. I'm trying to think of someone I worked with that was a fucking absolute mutant. Oh, Jackson Travoda. He's fucking natural. I mean, he won. I think he won a PCA overall, maybe natural, and then he won his pro card natural as well. Like in like one of them natty shows, but like it wasn't actually a dead one. It was actually pretty stacked up.
Yeah, it's stacked on. To be fair, the one I saw last year.
So here's the thing. Right, so I'll give you an example of what this was. So 7 pictures look really good. Midsection tightened up. Legs started to get some splits. Hey, coach, all's gone well this week. Everything's going good. What do you want me to do? Going forward. And I was like, okay, let's take out 20 grams of peanut butter from your diet. And let's push your Stairmaster, because if you told him to do steps, he's like, "What? Go for a walk." Like, I got the sound to do more cardio because he was like, he didn't get it. So I was like, "Okay, push your cardio from 30 minutes to 45." Okay, and he was like, "Your Stairmaster, please, mate." And he was like, "Yeah, cool, no worries at all." He did that. He checked in with me the following week. He had striated glutes and double hamstrings in a week. He'd gone from like looking I'd say around about, I'd say about 7 weeks out. We looked about 3 weeks out in a week.
Freaking
I
hell.
took peanut butter out and getting 15 minutes more cardio a day. Right? No drugs, no changes there, no nothing. I said, you had a really good week. And he's like, oh, I've been pretty hungry, but I've had a good week. I was like, I looked at his scale weight. He dropped like 1.5 kilo.
Do you know what?
Had steroid glutes and hamstrings.
I have a team bodybuilder that is like this, Jamie, and this kid just freaky structure.
Yeah.
But I spoke to him and I was like, right, we need to dig a bit more. He was like, bro, like I'd only been with him for the prep part of things, so obviously trying to learn his body on the go. And he said, bro, I'm even though this doesn't sound like scientifically possible, if you pull me down by like 50 calories, I'll drop numerous pounds. And I was like, huh? So I'm like, maybe we should drop a few hundred calories. And he's like, trust me, bro, like I'll lower by 100 calories. And then he starts dropping like 3 pounds in like a few days. I'm like, what the hell is going on? Like, this doesn't even make sense. And he's just like diced obliques, abs, veins and stuff. I'm like, because he's just dropped 100 calories. I'm like,
yeah, and then you ask him, have you like cheated before? And they're like, no, I just.
He's like 8 weeks out, shredded, and still, and he's doing like 20 minutes cardio a day on 3,500 calories.
Yeah. You will get it. You will get it all the time as well, and it's just a certain thing that people don't really like. It's a pleasure to prep, but it also makes you realize that all Olympians have got that level in them, right? They haven't got it. They're just been in the game longer and they've got tons more tissue. That's it. So
yeah, I mean that's
it's not hard for them to get in shape. Yeah, they'll have some struggles, but they find everything easier. They find growing easier. They find response to gear easier. So
and some of them they can't even comprehend some of the stuff that amateurs do. Like I was speaking to a classic physique Olympian, and I was saying like a lot of amateur bodybuilders in the UK like will push like upwards of 2 grams of gear like normally, and he was like, people use 2 grams of gear. And I was like, well, you're an Olympian. Would you not know that? He's like, no, I've not even pushed over a gram. I was like,
yeah, it's funny, isn't it? It is really funny. It's freaking hilarious. Yeah, and I think it's interesting as well because, like, if you look at like all the top Olympians from like a few years ago, this is interesting. But I would wager my bets that Branch Warren and Dennis Wolf took more gear than Phil Heath.
Oh, I would almost bet my life on it.
Yeah. I bet, right? And I think Ty Green probably pushed a fair whack.
Yeah,
just of the level that he is.
I think once you're getting like, he was like 280 peeled.
5'8".
I think at that sort of point, in order to achieve that, no matter how good your genetics are,
there's a level of drug usage, isn't there? But I think that people like Nick Walker and whatever is probably pushing a fair fucking whack. Like all the white dudes, with good genetics, they are probably still pushing a good whack. But you've got guys like Phil and fucking whoever else, obviously like super lovely, pleasing physiques and things like that. Just probably
that fullness that you can't train
for. Well, Tom Roden was using like 2 grams.
I think the trouble is you can't train for this 3-dimensional look that these guys have, and it makes people that are 240 look 280. It just does. Like that, like even like Flex Wheeler and stuff like when he was on stage, same sort of thing. Could compete with guys that were like 50 pounds heavier. No problems, just because of shape and insertions and fullness.
Absolutely. So so that's that. Okay, so what we got? Bro science versus scientific literature within body. Interesting. Good question.
So the main reason I wanted to ask that is because I think a lot of what we do in bodybuilding we knew to be the case before the science caught up with it. Right? When like a good example would be being able to digest more protein than like 35 grams per meal, which that always used to get pushed, right? Until the scientific literature, bodybuilders were already pushing above that.
Yeah, of course.
And then the science caught up and was like, actually, these amino acids will all be in your body available to you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Or training, like funnily enough, 7 sets of each exercise and 7 exercises or 8 exercises per workout didn't do anything for muscle growth more than just 1 or 2 and maybe 3 exercises.
Although Arnold might disagree.
Like, where exactly? So, obviously Mike Mentor took it to one fucking extreme, but also Arnold, obviously, and all that had it previously had it at another fucking extreme. Like, more is always better. But now we've obviously reached a medium where we go, okay, just enough for you to be able to recover. It's kind of where you want to be. So,
what are your thoughts on volume in training generally? Do you kind of opt on it's into individual, or do you more bias one way or the other? Because
I think that when you have had someone who comes and says to me, I grow better from volume, I know they're not training hard.
Yeah.
Because you don't grow. No one in the world grows better from volume. No one does. I mean,
people that are early on in their training career, knowing that they are very unlikely to be able to achieve good level of failure, would benefit from training with high volume.
Yes, but I would rather teach them how to lift fucking hard and properly, rather than then wasting time anyway doing.
So you start the low volume,
5 sets, 6 sets of fucking some bullshit, 3 or 4, 5, 5 reps in the tank sort of thing. I would rather take sort of client through. If the client says to me, "Yeah, I do need quite a bit of volume to grow," I would want them to come to me for a session, and I'll put them through one, and I'll show them.
Sure,
I'm going to talk about it, and I'm like, because you don't need what you.
Yeah, I think anybody who is a believer in high volume should most definitely get a session in with somebody that trains brutally hard. Some adopts that sort of Dorian Yates blood and gut style training, probably even almost excessively hard, in the sense that it's like indefinite intensifiers and stuff like that, just so that you can get a feel for what hard actually feels like.
Yeah, no, I think so too. And I've always grown better from it. And all of my, even when I was natural, all of my mates were like, you've got to be on stuff. You've got to be on stuff. There's no way, like, and I'm like, no, I genuinely wasn't. Do you know what I used to do? My training split used to look like when I was 18 through to 21.
What?
Was the off seasons. Obviously, I do 4 days a week, but on off season I used to do 3. I used to train to 20. It was 17 to 20. I did this. So it was Monday was push, Wednesday was pull, Friday was legs. That was it. I used to do.
Okay.
That was it. That's all I did. And on a Monday I would do 2 warm-up sets of dumbbell press. Then I would do 1 working set to muscular failure. Then I would do 1 head deck, 1 warm-up set, 1 working set to muscular failure. And then I would do lateral raises and then do the same sort of thing. And then, whatever. And I would kind of have like 2 exercises per muscle group, 2, apart from quads, which might have been 3.
Yeah.
And then that was it. And that's how I trained everything. I only trained 1 warm-up, 1 working set. And I went to total.
Would you say that
I got 255 on that?
That's impressive. I mean, would you say that there is a genetic aspect to how hard you can train, or do you think it's purely a developed skill? Do you think some people can quite simply just activate more muscle fibers?
I think it's environmental.
Yeah.
I think it's environmental. I think that if you grew up in a spit and sawdust gym where people just fucking went hell for leather, ripped it and gripped it, like that's ultimately going to teach you, like, I don't know, I've got to do that. But do you think they can train at Leonard or some fancy little fucking Piccadilly gym or a fucking David Lloyd, and that was when you started?
Yeah.
That's where your head will start with for a good bit.
Do you think that some people can just produce more stimulus out of a single set genetically, and not just based on training hard, but connecting muscle, contracting? Because in the same way that, right, in powerlifting, people will be staying the same weight, not building muscle tissue and developing more neurological adaptations and efficiencies to contract more muscle fibers. So they will just, from the same amount of muscle, generate more force output from the same. Bodybuilder could obviously do that. And there might be an aspect of some people are able to just utilize the muscle they've got to a larger degree.
I think so. I do think there is some sort of adaptations like that, and ultimately, I think that's the thing. I also think that is also a consistency sort of factor too, because and I mean like proper true consistency without those solid breaks. Because if you look at So let me talk about let me think about like a strength sort of comparison. So, okay. Oh yeah, no, I'll call this work. So, I do competitive like arm wrestling.
Yes, I love that.
Good fun. So there's one of the guys who's probably the strongest guy in the UK. He weighs less than 90 kilos most of the time, right?
Ooh.
So kind of like 19. His name's Tom Holland. He's he's unbelievably good. And I practiced with him, and I had a go with him on the right arm and also on the left. Now left, I'm about 40% weaker on the left compared to my right. Obviously, in terms of arm wrestling stuff. So because I only trained my right arm. But I went into I sort of gripped up with him and everything, and I went to do what I would normally do in terms of my movement. Now bear in mind I weigh 310 pounds. So I pulled back like this, got into a certain position, got my hand in a good grip, and then I went essentially to try and go sideways. I couldn't move through his tendons or his tissue. Now, in theory, that doesn't make sense, does it? That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Because ultimately,
face value,
okay, so look at how much I can row. I can row, whatever, like 160 kg off the fucking floor.
Yeah.
Or my dumbbell row is like 85 kg. Right. So if I can do that, why can I not pull this guy through there? Because like you mentioned, there's neurological adaptations, tendon integrity, years and years and years of a technical adaptation towards knowing how to stop someone's power by attacking in certain weak areas and breaking that all down into essentially all of that, and also having very, very strong lean tissue. He's got very, very like lean developed biceps, but that's kind of it, and very, very like freaky sort of like wiry forearms and flexors down. So ultimately, I should be able to rip through someone like that, and I can't. Now, you take that into a powerlifter. Now, someone who's trained again and again and again and again and again in that sort of fashion with a movement like that, they have developed neurological connections so that they know exactly how to get the most out of any mechanical advantage to being strong. Right? And a bodybuilder can then extrapolate from that. They know how to contract the tissue in the most effective manner possible under a stress and under load. And even when their head is blaring out, I'm fucking angry, I'm pissed, I just want to rip this bar up, they're still able to diverge from that and lift in a methodical fashion. So there's all different mannerisms that you can kind of apply to all of this. So so any style of weightlifting or anything like that will always have those neurological adaptations that are so crucial, I think. But you develop them from, again, environmental and genetic to a degree. But I think it's mainly just consistency with that pattern and that movement, and being instructed from a relatively early on point about how to lift specifically to target tissue like that. Because we've all seen someone who we fix their form, like a horrendous form, and they develop a shit ton more muscle. And they're now able to starting to understand how to connect with their tissue properly. Right.
I definitely think that the combination of the two, the benefits you get from that powerlifting and bodybuilding together, seems to opt for some pretty crazy results, because I've seen a lot of people that have been doing that power building style thing, or transitioning from powerlifting to bodybuilding. And obviously also the same with bodybuilders that continually chase very heavy lifts in the lower rep ranges. And I think what you find from those sort of people is that they just respond amazingly, because they're able to not only train hard and train to failure to produce stimulus, but get more out of each of the sets. Like I've got a kid that he's a team bodybuilder, just turned 17, and he was powerlifting before, and he can bench like 160 kilos. He was benching at 16, right, and dumbbell rows 85 kilos at 16. Right, so like this kid is crazy strong. I'll bring him up on the next podcast. I'll show up on Instagram. And we'll see. But he transitioned into bodybuilding, started with me, coming from the powerlifting background, and his physique has transformed at a stupidly fast rate, from the simple fact that beforehand he was already able to get a lot out of his sets. Now he's changing that into a bodybuilding style to produce stimulus. He just seems to grow at a freakishly different rate.
Well, so here's something interesting that you might sort of want to think about. So if you now, Dan, if you kind of forego bodybuilding and you focused on just getting very strong in bench press, deadlift, and squat, and working up to single reps where you're pushing for 1 rep maxes in a proper powerlifting routine. And what's your squat at the moment? Just barbell squat. Like, what could you roughly do just for one now?
Probably like 150, 160.
Right. So let's call it 160. Let's say you can do by the end of the year, and you can do 200. Yeah, first
Yeah.
Now, when you come back to bodybuilding the following year, let's say you leave it up, at end of the year and you're done with it, you move back to bodybuilding. Your 1 rep max was 200. You will now be able to squat that previous 160 that you did for multiple reps that you can run, which will is obviously going to have more of a hypertrophy sort of effect. But now you have done a strength building block. You'll come back to bodybuilding and you'll be able to actually progress very, very well. And that's probably why this guy is able to develop tissue so quickly as well, is because, yes, he can get a lot out of his sets neurologically and physically, but he's probably so strong in single repetitions that now he's actually doing repetition work. He's actually mega strong in that too.
Yeah, that's my kind of thoughts around that is that obviously in bodybuilding we're training progressive overload, but we've shown in powerlifting that powerlifters do not train the same as bodybuilders, and they are training for primarily strength. So sometimes a combination of the two can result in a pretty phenomenal test.
I think there's definitely room to trial it. However, powerlifters get injured on average 5 times a year more than a bodybuilder, which you can't really, as a high level competitor, you can't afford.
No, yeah. So I think obviously there's a reason why we train the way we train.
1 pec dab, 1 lat tail, 1 quad pop is game over for that year, really. So
yeah, I can relate to that. I had a pec dab last year.
So anyway, I think we have one more question to wrap up before we call this a doodly day.
Yes. Okay. I'd say probably what advice you could give to new coaches coming into the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. So for me specifically, it will be a case of the industry is very saturated.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, if you're coming into the scene and you want to develop, do it for monetary gain, you do whatever you need to do to set it up and make it the flashiest business possible, but you're just essentially going to be having a great big turd that you cover in, powdered sugar and some fucking, some fancy colours and whatever, a gold leaf, but it's still essentially a turd when you bite into it. So what you really should be doing is focusing on a way to develop your knowledge as the primary focus point for you. Then following this, you should be initially trying to help people out for free. So bodybuilders that you see with some potential, try and help them out and give them some pointers and some things like that, get them on board, coach them for your coaching for a very, very, very low rate, and just kind of help them with that so that you can have experience coaching people and kind of getting people to do quite well. Don't charge a fortune. That's you don't have a right to do that.
Yeah.
Once you have done that for a period of time and you've got to a certain level where you've kind of been doing that for a while, then what I would suggest is find out what your niche is going to be, how you're going to be different from all of the 5,000 other fucking coaches online who all do exactly the same shit that everyone else does. Everyone uses fucking Google Sheets. Everyone does video check-ins. Yeah. Everyone does 24/7 WhatsApp contact. So what are you going to do, not just from a service point of view, but what are you going to do from a point of view in terms of the way that you handle matters or handle situations or whatever that is going to effectively help you the most, really. So
I think I'll give my perspective as kind of a newer coach in the industry that's kind of just already been through that process. What I would definitely say is, just like you did, focus on knowledge as the primary factor, and not just like qualifications that you can get, but paid consults with people that are at the top end of the industry that you can actually get industry specific knowledge, because people need to realize there is very different thing between doing like a nutrition and training course online and bodybuilding subjective training, nutrition, supplementation. They are two very different things. But also focus on where your passion lies. Help people that you're actually passionate in helping, because that's where you're going to perform your best as a coach. And when your service is good and your results is good, then your clientele grows just on that merit.
Absolutely. One thing, sorry. Right, so essentially that's it. Like you will grow as a product of your routine commitment to the craft, routine development of your knowledge, routine broadcasting of that knowledge, and ultimately, I think one of the most important in new coaches is the thing that I suggested to you to do the other day, which you did actually do.
I did it.
You fucking lazy shit, my brother. I said, didn't I? So who's in your group chat?
So we have
chat called that. I'm sure the name's going to be good.
We have Ben, Connor Launder, we've got Tom from Christian's team, and I think we got one other guy that I don't think I new that Ben suggested adding. Let me.
I know this other as well. So
I don't know if he I voiced it, but another guy that was apparently quite a good upcoming coach as well.
Awesome. And now that's the thing I suggest: make a good chat, bounce ideas up each other, routinely chat with each other on a daily basis about things that you can do. Because if you don't do that, you will never pick up on the latest trends of things that you might miss, or you won't pick up on them fast enough for it to be something that you can relevantly put into your practices. Or you'll bounce ideas off each other and then you'll get completely shut down and go, oh, fuck, actually, I was about to make a huge mistake there. Or they'll go, oh, I never thought about that. Sounds really interesting. Let's see how it plays out.
That kind of thought process.
All five of you now making more mistakes and making more progresses as a group. You now are learning. You are 5 times the speed of what you were doing it before. That's how you progress.
I think that process that you can learn from everybody is fundamental.
They won't ever think you know more than someone else in any aspect either. Well, they will pick up on something that you have adapted your knowledge on, and it will make you 100%.
Everybody has gaps, right? And even people,
you're a fucking idiot.
Like, even if you're a bodybuilding coach and you go to a lifestyle coach, you can learn things from them in the sense of people managing skills and way that they deal with people that are having like mental struggles and stuff. They're going to make you a much better bodybuilding coach.
Exactly.
Everybody has.
When in the psychology of a client is a whole thing. We'll talk about other stuff on the next podcast.
100%.
But this is good. I'm very, very happy that you guys have done that, because now we will see you all really, really fast track, and you'll get it. Like in a year's time, you'll be like, fuck, I'm so glad Tom told us to do that. Like,
100%. I can.
That's how Cal, me, Joe Jeffrey, Christian, and Matt Strong have kind of obviously just pushed ourselves to the absolute top level. Yeah.
I think, I'm very lucky to be in a situation where there are kind of kind people like yourself that are willing to like mentor younger coaches and stuff in that sense.
Got to kind of give time to people who are worth giving time to.
100%, but some people feel like they need to gatekeep. I think it's people that care. It's other coaches that care, because we're all trying to achieve the same thing and like help as many people as possible.